5 minutes for Jay Gonzalez. Jay was born in Cleveland. He's a graduate of Dartmouth College and Georgetown University Law Center. After law school, he worked for a law firm in Cleveland and then Palmer and Dodge in Boston. He served as an elected town meeting member in Brookline and as Secretary of Administration and Finance under Governor Patrick. After his time in the Patrick administration, he served as president of Celtic Care Health and New Hampshire Healthy Families. Mr. Gonzalez lives in Needham with his wife Cindy and 2 daughters. Jay.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, fellow Democrats. You know what I love about us? We have always believed we can overcome any challenge if we put our mind to it and work for it. My entire life, I've been surrounded by people who've proven our potential for progress, but no one more than my parents. My mom is from Cleveland, and during college, she went away on a foreign exchange program to Spain. 9 months later, she came back married to my 19-year-old Spanish father and pregnant with me. And I love telling that story to parents who have kids going on foreign exchange programs. It really freaks them out. It was hard for them at first. My mom had to drop out of college to take care of me. My dad didn't speak English, and he'd never been to college. But they believed and worked hard. They raised 3 sons. My mom became a public school teacher and a member of the teachers union. My dad became a successful small businessman and a proud American citizen. They were just little guys who believed. And because of their example, I believe too. So I set my sights high, and with hard work and the help of many, many people, I've done okay. I have a wonderful family, including my wife Cindy, who's here tonight. I got to lead a health insurance company that gave low-income people access to health care, and I served as a cabinet secretary for Governor Deval Patrick, another little guy whose life story proves the American dream exists and who never lost sight of all those continuing to reach for it. But my experience is not unique. It's who we are as Americans, and it's what the Democratic Party is all about. We have always believed in the little guy. We've always fought for the little guy. We've always understood that the little guy is us, but not Charlie Baker. He's done nothing to help regular people get ahead, and as a result, we are all falling behind. So I'm offering an ambitious agenda to make progress on the challenges holding regular people back and to make Massachusetts a leader again. And I have the leadership experience to deliver on it. So when I'm your governor, we will aim high and we will make a meaningful difference in people's lives. We'll give every child and family in this state access to high-quality, affordable child care and preschool by the end of my first term. And we will fully fund our public schools to ensure that every child has access to a great public education. We'll have a transportation system that people can actually depend on to get to work on time. Crazy idea. We'll make the investments we need to make, and I will fire Keolis, the private operator of the commuter rail system. We will be more aggressive in fighting the opioid epidemic. We will deliver a single-payer healthcare system that's simpler, cheaper, and does a better job keeping people healthy. So, former health insurance CEO telling you we need to get rid of health insurance companies, and when I'm governor, we will. We'll aim high to take on climate change, for affordable housing, debt-free college, stronger gun laws, expanded opportunities for women and communities of color, taking on sexual assault and harassment. But most important, we will aim high when it comes to how we treat people. I will stand up for every single person in this state. I will see you and hear you and respect you. And while I will operate from the head, I will lead from the heart. Now, I know that I am the little guy in this election. I know that. But there's going to be a very clear choice. It's going to be a choice between someone who's only there for the privileged and the powerful and someone who will fight for the little guy. A choice between someone who is dragging Massachusetts backwards and someone who will make Massachusetts a leader again. And while I know that I'm the little guy in this election, literally and figuratively, I also know that little guys overcome overwhelming odds when their cause is just, they aim high, work hard, and support each other along the way. That's the lesson my parents taught me. It's the American story. It's what the people of Massachusetts have proven over and over again. We have a strong grassroots campaign and lots of momentum. Thousands of volunteers and supporters all across this state, and thanks to many of you in this room, we're in the endorsement of the Democratic Party at the state convention with over 70% of the vote. But I'm asking for your support too. I'm asking for your vote on September 4th, and I hope you will join our team. Thank you very much.
Massie was born in upstate New York. He's a graduate of Princeton University and holds a Master of Divinity degree from Yale and a Doctor of Business Administration from Harvard. Bob is the former president of the New Economy Coalition, the former executive director of Ceres, is that right? Yeah. And the founder of the Global Reporting Initiative. In his early years, he was an ordained minister at Grace Church, where he founded a homeless shelter. Bob has also published 2 books, Loosing the Bonds, A History of South American Apartheid and U.S. Involvement, and A Song in the Night, a memoir about his struggle with hemophilia and his liver transplant. Mr. Massie lives in Somerville with his wife Ann and has 3 children. Bob.
Thank you very much. I think we're at the point of the campaign where I want to go a little bit beyond my stump speech. You heard Jay's stump speech. It's a compelling stump speech. But I think we have to go a little bit beyond conventional thinking. And what I mean by that is I believe that we are really at a moment of crisis in this state and even in this country, and a moment of opportunity. And so we need a different kind of leadership. Not necessarily Beacon Hill leadership, but leadership that understands what's going on in this state, in this nation, and around the world, and can help lead us into the future. Now, both Jay and I have been all over the state. As Jay likes to say, we've spent good quality time together. And also, in 3 weeks and 1 day, we will be supporting each other, whoever the winner is. I want to thank you for how hard you've worked. But look, as I've been around the state, what I have seen is that people are struggling all over with the basic elements of life. And I want to support them as governor. I want to attack those problems. And you know what they are. I'm just going to list them quickly. People cannot afford, in many parts of the state, their rent. They cannot afford to get a house. They cannot afford a higher education. Our schools are spiraling away because we didn't pass the Chapter 70 budget because Governor Baker did nothing to support it. We know that people can't afford health care, and we know that our jobs are simply inadequate, particularly for young people. And as I have talked to millennials and young people all over the state, I realize we need a new approach to our economy, not necessarily a traditional approach, even going back 10 years to the Deval-Patrick approach. We need to know where we are now, and we need to know that we're moving into the future. Now let me give you a couple of examples of things that I think we need strong leadership that is broader than leadership on Beacon Hill. Number 1, on climate change. I'm grateful that Jay mentions it, but he doesn't give you any details about exactly what he wants to do. I have put out, and I'm going to pass these around, very detailed plans about how to move to 100% renewable energy. Because look, the energy companies are ripping you off. The utilities are sucking money out of your wallet, and they are transferring it from you to Wall Street. And in my background, you heard that I started as a minister, but I went on, as you also heard, to Harvard Business School, not to make a ton of money for myself, but so I could fight for economic justice and against the big corporations that control so many of the areas of our life. I mean, think about it. Big oil, big pharma, big internet, big utilities. We need to identify that force and fight against it. So climate change and moving to renewable energy are critical. I want to move to single-payer health care. Now, that's something I have believed in for 40 years. And why? Some of you know this story. It's because I was born with a serious illness called hemophilia. And hemophilia causes bleeding in your joints, And at the time, they were very poor medication, and so I lost the ability to walk at the age of 4. And then by the time I was 12, and I was still in leg braces, I was still in a wheelchair, my parents, who were journalists, moved to France in order for work. And in France, their commitment in the 1960s was so strong to healthcare as a right that they covered me as a foreign resident. And I got my ability to walk back. So you heard that Jay is committed to single payer. That's a relatively recent commitment. I believe in it. I have fought for it, and I will make sure it happens because I will not be distracted by the big corporations, the other health insurance executives who say we cannot achieve that. So I know I need to wrap up, but I just want to say we also have so many other wonderful opportunities in the state. I can see as we go around that people are ready for change. They're ready to move, but they are not getting the leadership. Charlie Baker, unfortunately, is a baby steps Baker, a governor who doesn't do very much, a governor who apparently does not see our strengths and who does not believe that we can achieve them. So this is a moment of danger. It is a moment of opportunity, and I believe that right now, the choice that will inspire people is not necessarily someone who has the same skills as Charlie, but someone who has a different record, a strong record of creating deep systemic change and putting us on the pathway to succeed and prosper, not just next year, 5 years from now, but 10 years from now. And that's, I believe, exactly what we need today, and I would love to have your support. Thank you.
Quick questions from the audience, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer, and we'll alternate. So the first question will start with Bob. Back there.
Actually, I'm going to ask Jay this question, but
Go
it
ahead.
has to do with mass transit. How are you going to replace Keolis? And for example, when last time they bidded out the contract, they didn't send in even a bid package to Mass Transit Rail, which is the rail system in China that operates and runs the rail in London and Stockholm and other places. And no one's ever reached out to them. And they're the best run transit company in the world.
Okay, so what I'll do, since this was directed to Jay, we'll let him go first and try to be flexible here. So
Yes.
Jay, how are you going to replace Keolis?
Yeah.
And then we'll let Bob comment on that as well.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to replace them by firing them and hiring people. I'm going to be the first governor to manage the commuter rail system directly under the direct control of the MBTA and myself. And here's why. I fundamentally disagree with taking core public services like this and privatizing them, because you necessarily lose control, and the people delivering this core public service are separated from the elected officials who are accountable to us to make sure it's being done in a way that meets our needs. And we see this playing out right now with Charlie Baker. Every time the commuter rail is performing poorly, which is a lot, he points the finger and says, I'm disappointed in Keolis. They're doing a bad job. Well, he is the governor. He's the governor. And this is the issue I hear the most about everywhere I go. It is affecting people's quality of life in a very real way every single day. And this is something that is going to start dragging our economy backwards. People aren't going to want to live here. Businesses aren't going to want to invest here if their workforce can't get to work on time. So we have to get serious about this. And I will bring this in-house. I will hire the people so that we have control. Your governor will have control over the solutions. I will also take the blame if things are going wrong. I'm not going to point the finger at someone else. I will be held accountable. I will own it, and we will fix it.
Now, please keep in mind that right now we're at that stage in the campaign where we need to differentiate ourselves. So I agree with Jay. In fact, I agreed with Jay about firing Keolis before he ever mentioned it. So this is my comprehensive transportation plan, which I'm going to pass around. It doesn't just address the question of the MBTA, it looks at the entire state. Because if we want to prosper in the next 10 years, we must plan for a state-of-the-art, statewide, electrified, modern transportation system. Governor Baker has blown 3 years already. We can't afford for him to blow it again. And when you look at this picture, you should look at the photograph, which is of high-speed bullet trains in Japan, which have existed for 20 years and go 160 miles an hour. That's where we should be headed. Chinese have built 12,000 miles of high-speed rail. We have 0. So I agree, we need to fire Keolis, we need to stop privatization, but we have to have not only a bold dream, but a bold plan to address and improve our transportation system.
So, I would like to ask Mr. Massie, why did you leave the country not too long ago and go to Fontainebleau, France? What was the purpose of that trip?
That sounds like an accusation. But, Jim, thank you for asking that. I won a major international prize and gold medal for the work that I started 20 years ago to change the global economy. How did I do that? Because I realized that investors, in order to make smart decisions, needed to understand not just how big companies, how much money they made, but how they made it. And I created an entirely new system of accounting that measures energy use, it measures human rights, it measures gender equity, and it is now required around the world and by major stock exchanges. Do you know where it doesn't exist? The United States. And you know where it could have a major positive impact on our economy, bringing business together with activists and others? Massachusetts. Do you know who doesn't know anything about it? Charlie Baker. So this is an opportunity for us to, we think we're way ahead of the rest of the world. I'm sorry, we're not. And as long as we live in a bubble where we think our energy is better and our systems are better, we're going to actually continue to fall behind. This is what I mean. We need someone who is aware of the future, who understands where our economy is going, and has a bold record of actually transforming the systems that drive capitalism and correct the failures of capitalism around the world.
So, I want to congratulate Bob on the award. It's a big deal and clearly well-deserved. And I don't minimize the experience that Bob brings to his candidacy for governor. He's a great candidate, and if he becomes the nominee, as he mentioned before, I will support him 100%, and all of you should too. But there is this difference Bob brought up about our experience, and it is very different. And I think one of the biggest factors for all of you to consider in terms of who to support is that difference in experience. Unlike Bob, I have leadership experience in state government getting big things done. As Governor Patrick's Secretary of Administration and Finance, I oversaw the state budget during the worst fiscal crisis the state had faced, and a number of other things, and was also his point person often for negotiating a lot of the big legislation we got through the legislature with legislators and other key stakeholders. And while I've heard Bob minimize that experience or say that that's not what we need right now, I think it's exactly what we need right now. We both are advocating for a very ambitious, progressive agenda. Despite what the President of the United States thinks, there's no dictator in government. Not the governor, not the president, not anyone else. And so that experience and my record of working successfully to get big things done, some of the biggest reform packages we got through during those years, I think should matter. Because it's not going to matter what we want to do unless we actually do it. And in government, it takes listening, it takes communicating, it takes understanding the interests of all the different stakeholders and legislators, and figuring out if this is where we're trying to go, what is that path that's going to get us as close to that place as possible. And it's good that government works that way, and it's healthy. And I think because of that experience, it's why I have the support of progressive grassroots organizations across the state, the Democratic Party, a number of progressive elected Democrats, including the key sponsors of big climate change legislation and single-payer health care, because they, I think, believe that I'm going to be able to deliver on this ambitious agenda.
So to try to maximize the questions, we're gonna ask you to take 90 seconds on your answers. We're cutting 30 seconds off. In the beginning, there
We can
won't be a
handle
warning.
anything, whatever you want.
There will be a warning at the 1 minute and at the 30 seconds. And I do want to know, we can tell this is a major event because the Republican Party tracker is in the room filming us. Everything is back.
My name's Chad Carboni. I live in Salem. I'm a member of a labor union for the last 23 years,
Yeah.
Local 12 in Boston, the plumbers union. It seems to me a lot of the problems you brought up are cured by labor unions. Insurance, healthcare, pensions, annuities, a leg up. All these opportunities come with labor unions. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher or construction or whatever it is. My wife is also in the labor union. We've been brought up. We've had children when we were very young. We had them on the welfare system. We got helped out. I was 24 years old when I got it. I had health care instantly. You know, I haven't been on the welfare system since. You know, which is a direct result of that. What can you do, rather than the lip service? We donate a lot of money to Democratic candidates. We don't get a lot back. That's the honest truth. We send out our members, we do canvassing, we do a lot for the Democratic Party, but then the backs get turned on us. When it comes time for Davis-Bacon Act, many construction standards that need to be kept up on.
So if I can summarize the question for the candidates is what you'll do to support labor unions.
Infrastructure.
And Jay Gonzalez goes first on this. Jay.
Chad, thank you for your question on what you do. We need unions now more than ever, for the reasons you described. As we've noticed union membership decline, we've also seen a decline in the middle class and a huge gap in income inequality, and we need to fix it. So I've been a strong advocate. I want to say a couple things about trade unions in particular and ways in which you guys are getting screwed right now. For example, wage theft legislation, which would protect workers and ensure we aren't exploiting workers, bad contractors, didn't get through the legislature this year. Charlie Baker didn't support it. I will. There are all these schemes going on to privatize public construction projects, like public housing projects in Somerville and elsewhere, which are really just end runs around public bidding laws and prevailing wage laws, which is wrong. Those laws are there for a reason. Those standards are important. And Charlie Baker is pushing this. So I'm very proud because of my strong stance on unions. I have the endorsement of the biggest state employee union, NAGE, AFT, Teachers Union, Massachusetts, Moses, another state employee union, the Iron Workers Union, Local 7, the Painters Union, UFCW, and more. So I am earning support from a lot of trade unions because they know I'm going to be a strong advocate. And I know people are feeling like the Democratic Party has left them, and you've been working hard for Democrats and haven't been getting something back. I'm in this to work for regular people and make a difference in working people's lives, and you can count on that.
Thank you for the question. I have been working on labor rights since I was in college. I was part of the J.P. Stevens struggle back in the 1970s. I have worked closely with the National AFL-CIO on corporate power for many years, especially with their director of strategic campaigns. I personally fought Shell Oil on labor issues and human rights issues, and was able to force them to give up the particular battle that they wanted to fight against me. I'm a member of a union. I'm a member of the National Writers Union, which is part of the United Auto Workers Local 1981, and my wife is the secretary of her union. So he may be a strong candidate for unions. I'm a much stronger candidate. I understand what unions have done. I have walked the picket line. I understand that they're the key to our democracy. I would be the first governor in the history of Massachusetts to be a union member, and I believe that I understand those underlying questions of economic justice, of corporate power, which Jay does not mention. Notice he still hasn't mentioned it. How we fight back against those. And I have walked the picket line recently for the SEIU 509, for the National Grid folks. So I believe I understand it. I believe I understand how unions integrate into our modern economy and how much we need to support them so that the basic fundamental freedoms that we need as Americans are protected. I view unions as critical to that, and I would be someone who worked with them closely as governor of Massachusetts.
Gentleman with the beard.
Thank you. So this question is around the fact that I know that both campaigns have recently received the public funding from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, taxpayer dollars, and more aimed towards Bob first, so probably starting there and transitioning to Jay. To see on the books from the campaign's expenditures the $20,000 repayment to you personally for the loan that you had paid towards the campaign, also coming off of the heels of a trip to France.
On the what?
The optics of
The trip to France.
the optics of that and the responsibilities of how to properly use that taxpayer money and whether or not repaying yourself is the right place to be doing that, especially that time.
So the question is, you've accepted public funding, and is the way you're spending it appropriate? Is that the question? Okay, Bob first.
Well, this is something that's misunderstood, and I know that Jay's team is trying to whip this up, but here's the reality. I was badly injured about 7 years ago. I got a legal payment for that, and at the very beginning of the race, I knew, as Jay knows, that it's very hard to raise money. So my wife and I said, we are gonna put a sum of money that we could have kept for ourselves into the campaign. Now, wealthy people do that all the time. So we have contributed to that, and the particular loan repayment was because we were waiting for public money. We had to bridge that gap. This is completely normal. I've run many nonprofits, and as soon as, so we wanted to make sure that was bridged, and when the money came in, we returned it. That was, we checked with OCPF every single step of the way. But I'd like to say, I think here Jay and I make common cause. It has been really hard to raise money. And why? Because Governor Baker is going to his corporate buddies. He's raising thousands and millions of dollars. We have a system corrupted by money. It's wonderful that we had a small amount of public financing, but 20 years ago, I fought for the previous public financing bill that was killed by the Democratic legislature because they don't want competition. They don't want people to run against them. So the whole system is broken. I'm actually extremely proud that we have won an effective campaign that has kept pace with the significantly more money that Jay has raised, also from many corporate leaders. But just in the larger sense, he and I both know that this is a deep problem and that we need to fight for reform to protect our democracy from the corruption of money, which I am prepared to do as governor.
So I'm really proud of the fact that we've raised $1.2 million, I've never done this before, from grassroots financing, not from corporations or corporate donors, grassroots financing and public financing. I do not believe public funding should go to repay candidates and go in their personal bank accounts. And it's allowed by law right now. That's something that I would a loophole I would close. I don't think when people filling out their tax forms say they're willing to donate a certain amount to help finance political campaigns, they expect that money is going to end up in the candidate's personal bank account. Let me say that there are a number of problems with our campaign finance laws, and I've been talking about these from the beginning of my campaign. We need elections to reflect the will and influence of regular people. And right now, it is the wealthy special interests who are influencing elections and policy in government. Now, Massachusetts campaign laws actually aren't that bad. You can't get corporate donations, and any individual can't give more than $1,000. But Charlie Baker has figured out loopholes around this. He's the only candidate in the country that's soliciting checks for $43,000, funneling it up to the National Republican Party, who takes a piece of it to give to people like Roy Moore in Alabama and Donald Trump and others, and the rest of it flows down to the state party for his personal benefit. It's wrong. And I would close what I refer to as the Baker loophole. He and his team played a huge role in the charter school ballot campaign, trying to lift the cap on charter schools, raising $25 million. They were doing some political money laundering scheme, and the organization got fined the biggest campaign finance fine in state history. I'm the first candidate in this state to take a pledge to support a constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United. We got to get dark money out of politics.
Mark. There's a big, my name is Mark Steele, I live in Salem. There's a big push by the Republican Party to have governors in states, to get governors elected in various states. In fact, there are only 16 Democratic governments in the United States. What would each of you do in your role as governor of Massachusetts that would have an effect on the nation as a whole?
So Jay, first on this, what would each of you do to help elect Democratic governors?
No, just what can you do? I mean, what types of things would a governor of Massachusetts do that would have an effect on the nation as a whole?
So there are a few very direct things that people should be aware of, particularly if you're concerned about what's happening nationally. For example, the next governor of Massachusetts is going to play a role in redistricting congressional districts. Do we want Charlie Baker playing a role in influencing our congressional districts in Massachusetts? If Elizabeth Warren becomes president, or she or Ed Markey leaves their job in the middle of their term, then the governor of Massachusetts is going to appoint our next United States Senator. Do we want Charlie Baker being the one who's appointing our next United States Senator to the U.S. Senate? But beyond that, there's a lot we can do to lead. We need to be pushing back against this horrific, backwards, anti-American agenda that Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress are pushing. And we've got a governor right now who at worst is complicit and at best is indifferent. And it's not good enough. It is not good enough. People are living in fear. We are moving backwards on climate change and healthcare and a whole number of other areas. And we need to stand up. I'm not naive. I know the governor of Massachusetts isn't going to be able to change Donald Trump's mind or dictate what happens in Washington. But the people of Massachusetts deserve a governor who is standing up and fighting and advocating for our values and interests. And I will do that.
You won't be surprised to hear that Jay and I agree on some things, and I agree with this. To your point specifically, we have tried the middle of the road. We can try and be sort of like Republican-like. Now we need to be bold. We need to embrace a strong progressive agenda. And that includes things we haven't talked about yet. Strong support for women's rights and equality. We need to support. We need to fight institutionalized racism, which is a real thing, damaging lots of people all across the state. And we need governors who are willing to go out and support other Democratic governors. I mean, Massachusetts is a prominent, well-known state. In fact, one of the things I'm sure you all hear is how come you always end up with Republican governors? It's because we have a screwed up primary system, as you all know, which I will fix. But our values, our democratic values for which we're known across the country, are not being reflected in our leadership. And when we have a Democratic governor, a bold, progressive Democratic governor, people will say, well, why didn't we think of that? We could do that. We could move to universal health care. We could put in a transportation system. We could move forward on renewable energy. We could move forward so quickly on renewable energy, we could end up exporting electricity and beyond. So that's what it is. We need someone bold, vigorous, who understands grassroots movements. You know, Jay said that he has experience in government. I have very strong experience bringing people together who do not agree, and I've done that all over the world, and I believe that I can do that here. And once we see that the future is possible, then I think we're going to inspire not only the people here, not only people in New England, but across the United States.
Massachusetts is probably the only state in the country that's never had a statewide office holder that's graduated from the state university. In fact, Vermont has had more governors that are UMass alumni than Massachusetts. If you are elected governor, what will you do to make UMass a shining star for the middle class.
It's true that I did not go to UMass, but I ran a program at UMass, and I taught at UMass Boston. And I had the chance over 2 years to see just how extraordinary those institutions are, and how hard the people who attend those schools work, and how much debt burden they have to take on, and how long it takes them to complete their degrees, and how little support they are actually getting from the legislature. Now, our state university system, both in Massachusetts and around the country, was found to be free. I mean, that's what it was. And yet, every year, year after year, we have relentlessly put the burden on middle income or lower income kids or others who go to our state schools, ratcheting up so that you can't get out of UMass Boston or UMass Amherst without borrowing a ton of money in most cases. And that then burdens you for the rest of your life. How can you then buy a home if you owe 30, 80, 100? I met a woman yesterday who owes $300,000. So that is a travesty. That's an outrage. So I think as somebody who's actually walked those campuses, taught those students, who understands, who knows the faculty, I would be the strongest governor on behalf of the UMass system, and that includes our community colleges, our state colleges, and the UMass system. And I think that's critically important. We cannot abandon all of those people who are our future citizens. And as you know, many people who study in Massachusetts colleges stay here. And yet we are making it harder and harder for them to succeed. And that is a recipe for long-term economic failure.
Thank you for the question. I will make it affordable and debt-free for any Massachusetts resident who wants to go to one of our public universities or community colleges. Student debt and the cost of college, including our public universities, right now to go to UMass Amherst, it costs about $30,000 a year. Most people can't afford it. And so they're either not going when they want to, and thereby not maximizing their full potential and dreams, or they're going and being saddled with huge amounts of debt that are dragging them back for years on end. We need to do this not only for those fellow residents, young people mostly, who want to go and realize their full potential, but we need to do it for us. There's a collective benefit to this. As Bob mentioned, most of the people who go to UMass or any of our state or universities or community colleges ends up staying in Massachusetts, and they are the workforce that feeds our economy and all the jobs that our businesses demand. So this is in our collective interest, not just the personal interest of each of those students. The other thing that I would do is make sure that we are supporting the entire UMass system. After the Mount Ida fiasco, I went to visit with some of the UMass Boston students. Right after, Governor Baker and President Meehan of the system said that their number one priority was taking care of the students at Mount Ida. UMass Boston has been treated like second-class citizens, the students, the faculty there, and that will stop when I become governor.
Pick a woman.
I was hoping yes.
Thank you, Jim. I wonder if both of you could talk a little bit about the issue of resources and how we can do a better job with funding, education, transportation, all the things that we want to do. Particularly since the Fair Share Amendment, has gone down. That's not happening. And I know, like during the Duvall's administration, one of the many great things happened, but one of the things that didn't really happen was the tax reform. And that didn't seem to really go where we needed it to. And then from Bob's perspective, what can you say about how you work with the legislature? How you go about doing that in order to work for the resources that we need.
So the question from Renee Keeney, the chair of the Marblehead Democratic Town Committee, is about resources, and Jay is first.
So this is going to be a big issue in the general election. We've got a governor right now who's saying, his whole approach to the job is no more money, where are we, what do we have, what's the best we can do? Instead of where do we need to be and how do we get there? I will, and I've been saying throughout this campaign, I will immediately propose a progressive way to raise the revenue we desperately need in state government, not only to sustainably support the level of programs and services we have today, which we aren't doing responsibly, but to make some of the critical investments we need to make in education, transportation. So we've got a regressive tax structure in Massachusetts. We need to be asking those who are doing well to pay a little bit more to make some of these critical investments. And I am eager to have that debate with Charlie Baker and why it's so important. There are a number of different ways we can do it. I'm going to charge the Department of Revenue immediately to give me options for how we ask those who are doing well to pay more. There are a lot of business tax credits we should be looking at that we put in place many years ago that are giving billions of dollars away to businesses. We don't even look at whether or not they're achieving their intended purpose. But this is where experience matters. So I helped Patrick develop that $2 billion tax reform package, and the problem with it was we developed it in a room by ourselves and dropped it on everybody else. And it was dead on arrival. Something that big and complicated and important, you need to involve legislators and other key stakeholders, get input, refine it, get people invested in it, so that at the end of the day, you've got the support to pass it. It's a lesson I learned from the Patrick administration. It's one of many where that experience is going to become valuable to get some of this big stuff done.
I do respect Jay's experience, which is why I'm surprised. I mean, in a recent newspaper story, they, in the Lowell Sun, they said that I had laid out detailed proposals on revenue, and that Jay was using a kind of trust me approach. I'll figure it out when I get elected. And you heard him say that he's going to has to develop options. So, number one, I completely agree. We have to move to a more progressive income tax system, and that's something we've been debating for 25 years. We came close in the Fair Share Amendment. It failed on a technicality, and it might have passed. First of all, if Charlie Baker hadn't put so many pro-business judges on the court, and secondly, if we had developed a momentum to go forward, we had not settled for so many of the solutions that came at the end of the legislative session. But let me just share a couple of other things. We could have, as I mentioned, I talked about energy that could, revenue that could come from energy. I would like to have a real estate tax, transfer tax. We're building massive high-rises in Boston that are big piggy banks for foreign investors. So if somebody can buy an apartment for $6 million, they can buy it for $6.2 million, and we can put that money into affordable housing. If we build a north-south rail link, for example, that will free up a lot of real estate in the area, which we can then sell or put into a trust fund. So there are many different ways. I'll tell you something at Harvard Business School. Financing is something that has a lot of different solutions, and we should start. What do we want? What will the economic benefits be? What are others doing? What will it cost not to do it? And then how much does it cost, and how are we going to pay for it over time? Those are the questions you ask when you're a government leader or when you are a business leader. Charlie Baker is not answering them. I believe I've laid out some really bold steps for that, and I'd like to invite Jay to do the same.
We're going to Bob to ask a question of Jay, and then Jay to ask a question of Bob, and then they will close. And you have 90 seconds to answer one another's questions.
So one of the themes, and again, we're at that point where I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to show some differences. And one of the differences is that, in my judgment, Jay is a relatively new convert to some of the ideas. So Jay, you know we've talked about this before. Up until very recently, you were the head of a for-profit health insurance company, and which had some aspects of it where you excluded some people in order to make that profit. Now, apparently, when you were doing that, that was the system that you preferred, and then you stepped down to that from that to run for governor. You didn't use that opportunity to talk about single payer, and now you're suddenly for single payer. So how can we be confident that having supported one system up until very recently and not exercised your leadership as budget chief or in that capacity, that you will have the deep commitment to move forward on single payer, which so many people obviously want?
So, I've I've heard you talk about the fact you've supported single payer longer than I have, which I think you probably have. You said it's been 40 years. I was 7 40 years ago, so I did not support single payer 40 years ago. I'm going to acknowledge that right up front. But I have supported it for a long time, even when I worked at the health insurance company, and it is not true. You keep saying this, it's not true that my health insurance company excluded sick people. We covered people in the Medicaid program. You have to accept everybody who enrolls and who's assigned to your plan, and we did. But I'm very proud of what we did at my health insurance company. We covered low-income people in the Medicaid program who needed access to health care, which is why I decided to work at that company. And while I wasn't, at that time, attempting to change our entire healthcare system and 20% of our economy, I was trying to do good through the system that existed. And we did. We tried all kinds of new things, very un-health insurance company-like things, to help all of our members who were addicted to opioids, the #1 health condition of our members. We took away all barriers to access to treatment, a very un-health insurance company-like thing to do, to make it easy for our members to get access to care. We paid people to go out in the community and find our members who were addicted to get them enrolled in the treatment they needed. The Boston Globe named my company, because of all the innovative work we did on the opioid crisis, one of 46 game-changing companies in Massachusetts, because we got results for our members. And I'm very proud of that. I do think we need to change the system, which is why I'm running for governor. I've been a forceful advocate for single payer throughout this campaign, and you can count on the fact, because of my experience and knowledge of the healthcare industry, I think I'm best positioned to actually get it done. So, we both have kids, I know. I assume, like me, your kids had the experience and privilege of being able to go to early education and childcare, which was a huge benefit to my 2 daughters. This is an issue I'm passionate about. I became knowledgeable about as chair of the State Board of Early Education and Care, and I believe giving every single child and family access to good quality child care and preschool will be game-changing for kids and for families and for our economy. I wanted to ask Bob, where do you place this in your priorities, and what is your plan with respect to early education and child care?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for taking that position. I've been talking about having a comprehensive approach to 0 to 3 childcare, early childcare education. But you asked me, where do I place it? I place this in the context of our failure to support women in addition to children. So we have many single moms, we have many who are trying to make ends meet and can't afford it. We have continuing sexism in the system. We have the failure to provide adequate medical care, child and maternal health, sexual harassment protection, and many, many other things. And you know, Jay, I think you know, I put out this comprehensive plan on women's equality and gender justice that includes a substantial comment, perhaps not quite as developed as yours, but a substantial support for exactly that problem. But in the context that we have continued to make life difficult for women in ways that need to be addressed. Now, you and I are both men, but I think that it's precisely because we are men that we can speak to other men who don't get it. And so that's something I've been doing for a very long time. I fought for women's rights in college, and I have consistently fought for that for a very long time. So I also believe that as a white person, I can speak to white people about racism in some ways that we need to hear. So I do appreciate that you are supporting this. I think that whoever becomes the nominee should hammer Charlie Baker for his failure to see the need. I mean, Charlie lives in some weird world where people don't have these problems. Most people in Massachusetts do, and I just want to thank you. I think most of us are on the right track.
In Charlie's weird world, I hope you're not talking about a physical class. Reminder to everybody.
Talking about Swampscott.
The primary is going to be on September 4th, which is the day after Labor Day. If you're going to have trouble voting then, there are some forms out on the table there. Pick one up as you go out, on the table as you come in to request an absentee ballot. Thank you everyone for coming, and we will begin with Jay Gonzalez in 5-minute closing remarks.
Thank you. you, Jim. I want to thank the Swampscott Democratic Party for organizing this great debate, and my colleague and friend, Bob, who, as he said, we've been spending a lot of good quality time together for the engagement, and everybody for choosing to spend a little bit of your life coming to engage with us tonight. Really appreciate it, and it matters. As you've heard, I am running because I think we need to aim high. I think we need a governor and a government that is going to work with a sense of urgency to take on the big challenges holding regular people back all across the state, to stand up for every single person, and to make Massachusetts a leader again. And as I said, our experience is different. Bob talks about it a lot. I talk about it a lot. That's for you to judge who you think would be better positioned to deliver on that ambitious agenda. I'd like to think, and I'm making the case, that it's me, because I think that experience in state government matters in terms of being able to deliver on an ambitious agenda. Now, you're going to have a choice in this election. And one of the things that I am really clear about is the fact that you all are probably haven't said what is on your mind right now, which is if one of us ends up becoming the Democratic nominee, or if I become the Democratic nominee, how are you going to beat this guy? Right? He's so popular. He's really tall. I know you're thinking it. Tall's overrated, okay? That's my objective opinion. No offense to Steve Scott, who's in the room over there. And it's easy to be popular when you don't do anything. And you never take a stand. And your whole approach to the job is being cautious instead of courageous. Now think about it. What has Charlie Baker actually accomplished that's made a difference in people's lives? Nothing. When I ask people who say they think he's doing a good job why they think so, the answer I usually get is something like, he seems nice, and I'm really glad he isn't one of those crazy Republicans. Aren't we so lucky? Yes. Well, when did the measure of whether our governor's doing a good job become that he's nice and isn't crazy? I'll tell you when. November 2016 is when that happened. And Charlie Baker takes advantage of it. He hides behind the chaos Trump is creating. With the bar so low, he hopes we will all just be grateful he isn't crazy like our president. Well, we deserve more from our governor. Yes, we do. Not being crazy is not good enough. It's not good enough. And don't believe all these insiders who say Baker can't be beat. The media, the special interests, the pundits, they don't decide who our governor's going to be. We decide that. We decide. But I need your help. I'm asking you to join our team. Vote for us in the primary on September 4th and in the general election on November 6th. Help us in the meantime. Knock on some doors, make some calls, put bumper stickers on your car, put yard signs in your yard, talk to your friends and your neighbors, forward our website on to people at work who you know and work with. Tell them about the choice in this election. What we are finding is when we're engaging with people on the doors or at events like this, most people haven't thought about this race very much. It's not that they've decided they're supporting Charlie Baker. And once we engage with them for more than 5 seconds and remind them that we deserve more than nice and not crazy, we're getting a lot of support. And you will too. But we need your help. And with your help, I am 100% confident we will win this election. We will make Massachusetts a leader again. We will aim high. And we will make a meaningful difference for all the little guys out there. Thank you very much.
I want to pound on Charlie Baker a little bit too. Think about this. This man is the governor of Massachusetts, and yet since Trump was elected, where have we seen him? Tens of thousands of people us, our friends, our neighbors across the whole state have come out into the streets and demanded action in the Women's March, 2 of them, in the Science March, the Climate March, the Immigration March, the Gun Violence March, the Gun Violence March. Did he show up?
No.
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 Did he even offer a statement?
No.
No. And you know why? Because he cares more about what Donald Trump thinks about him than what we think about him. So that is just not okay. And we need to remember that we could have a governor who would stand up to Charlie Baker. You know, I mean, Donald Trump basically said that the only reason he lost in New Hampshire is because we all went and voted illegally. Shame on you. Florence. You know what the governor should have said? Florence. The governor should have said, I'm sorry, Mr. President, servant, I need to say you are respectfully slandering my own people. You know what he actually said?
Nothing.
He did say something. He said, I don't know what goes on in New Hampshire. It's bold leadership. No, it's not. And let me tell you also that when I look into the future and I realize that we could tackle the systemic, the structural problems that we face. This isn't about one more bill or one more funding arrangement. This is a structural problem. We have to address wage inequality and wealth inequality. And we have to make sure that people, the majority of people in Massachusetts who are having a hard time, get their support, get our support. But when we look into the future, I think we could have wonderful, thriving communities. Communities that...
It's my fault.
That's Charlie Baker. We could have wonderful, thriving communities built on the concept of sustainability, which is balancing economic progress, balancing social justice, and balancing protection of our planet. We could have that. It's growing all over the world. We're not doing it. We could have agricultural systems that create food justice so that we bring food from our farms into our cities. We could be doing so many wonderful things on education. We could have distributed energy. We could remove ourselves from the grip of the fossil fuel companies that want us to continue paying them so they can pay Wall Street. We could move in those directions. And I am excited about that. But we have to believe in it. We have to believe in that future. And I think you do. You wouldn't be here if you weren't, if you didn't. But we need to persuade others. So I too want to ask you to do everything that Jay said, but for us, for me, for this mission. You know, I'm getting a little nostalgic, Jay. We've been together for so long, and in 3 weeks we're going to be changing roles. But seriously, this is an opportunity for us. This is an opportunity. And I'll tell you why I am excited and why I think the energy that our campaign has brought together will win. Because when we look across the state, the country, and we identify these opportunities and we lay out what Democrats really stand for, we are starting to win. And if a Democrat can win in New Jersey, in Virginia, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, if a Democrat can win in Alabama, we can win right here in Massachusetts.
Thank you both. Thank you to the Register of Deeds candidates. Thank you to everyone for coming. I think one thing is clear. We have 2 great candidates for governor. We have 2 great candidates for lieutenant governor and for secretary of state. Everybody go out and vote and support this vote.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Make sure you sign the signing sheet.